begins. But we have a fantastic panel here today, and we're going to be talking about a few different things around hyperlocal and some interesting perspectives from these guys. These guys are all major players in the industry today. And I'm going to just give them a second to introduce themselves and quickly say what they do, and then we're going to jump right into it. So, Bo, do you want to start?
Hi, I'm Bo. I work at a company called Zaarly. We're apparently a major player.
You are. Come on. Jonathan?
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Jonathan Zabusky from Seamless. Hopefully a lot of you know us, at least if you're from New York. A marketplace connecting diners with local restaurants.
I'm Bastian Lehmann, founder and CEO of Postmates. We are probably best described as a remote control for your iPhone that you can use to browse the inventory of restaurants and retail stores in your city, and you can purchase items and have them delivered in 1 hour, and you can view and track the progress on your cell phone. And we're doing that by utilizing a fleet of 150 Postmates in San Francisco, the first market that we're live.
Very good. And I'm Asif Khan, the founder of the Location-Based Marketing Association. We're a nonprofit industry association that connects brands on the one side, on the other side, hyperlocal platforms of all media types, so billboard, radio, television, and of course mobile. Just to jump right into it, and actually before we do that, just as a quick aside, I just learned that Bo has a brother named Luke and grew up during the Dukes of Hazzard time. So I'm like,
yeah, Dukes of Hazzard, it's big time.
So anyhow, that's pretty cool. But let's jump right into this. The first thing I want you guys to quickly comment on is, especially here in the U.S., you're still coming out of a recession. A lot of people out of work. Give me your perspective on what each of your platforms does to create jobs in a hyperlocal way. Bastian, do you want to start?
Sure. So for Postmates, it's relatively straightforward. We're utilizing the downtime of messengers and couriers in a city, and that makes up 50% of our fleet. A typical bike messenger courier has up to 80% downtime on a single day. They often live off a couple of tags. That's how they call their delivery jobs. And we give them a great way to utilize that downtime.
Okay.
Yeah, so for Seamless, a lot of us think about it from a consumer perspective, but from the small and medium-sized business perspective, we're really in business to help them compete more effectively and help them focus their time, their energy, their resources on what it is they do really, really well. So to the extent we can help them compete, help more restaurants come into business, stay in business, focus again on delivering a great restaurant experience, fulfilling that in a really fast, efficient, compelling way to customers. That in that way, helping small businesses compete against large chains who've got deeper resources, whether that's for marketing, whether that's for product development. That's what Seamless is really trying to do.
And Bo?
Yeah, I always sound like moderately insane when I talk about this, but we're a local peer-to-peer marketplace, and so what we found is really the place that we do extremely well is when we help people start companies where they get to basically spend all their time making money doing what they love, and we take care of all the crappy parts of starting a company. And so, we talk about this a lot, actually. Meg Whitman is on our board, who built eBay, and eBay, they say about 1 million people a year make a living on eBay. And with the market we're in and just the dynamics that exist today compared to 15 years ago when eBay was built, it's like our not too outwardly stated goal, but we talk about it a lot internally to be a place that 10 million people a year make a living doing what they love. So, that is kind of largely why we exist.
Is there a way, especially in your environment, in a peer-to-peer marketplace, you're creating activities, jobs for people to do. Is there a way that you think that can get fed into the overall sort of measurement of employment here in the U.S.?
I think it definitely will. It's just a matter of if we're like, we all run not you guys at Seamless, but the rest of us run the risk of being suffering from the order of magnitude time estimation problem. Is it in 2 years or 20 years? That's a really big difference in the startup world. But there's no doubt that it will. I think even with Jobs Act and what AngelList is doing and just a lot of the kind of dynamics that are happening in the space, it is going to start to hit the register at a big GDP macro employment level, because people want to work for themselves. They want to do the things they love to do, and it's more possible today than it ever has been.
Okay. Let's shift slightly off of that and into a topic we haven't covered a lot today, and that's payments. Obviously each of you, has a set of online tools that you're providing in the marketplace, and there's a payment, component that has to happen as part of that. So how are you handling that local transaction? What what kind of systems are you integrating with, partnering with? Are you looking at things like near field yet? Are you using PayPal type technologies? How are you handling that piece? Jonathan?
Sure. For us, obviously, it's been really an interesting last 12 months where payments has really risen to the forefront of the discussion. From Seamless's perspective, it's very early for us to embrace a single technology or a single, point of view on this topic. We remain agnostic right now. We're obviously very vested in seeing, which of the payment providers actually, gets traction. But even the Googles of the world, with the resources they have, are still trying to build traction for Wallet. And so I think it's still so fragmented so early that for a company like ours that is just trying to create liquidity in our marketplace, that it'll be increasingly important. It is very important now, will remain important for us to be agnostic and to really follow our consumers. We're not getting a huge push from our merchants right now to adopt one over the other, but we listen to both sides. I mean, in our world of balancing supply and demand, we need to make sure that we are, making sure that if a particular provider of ours, a supplier or restaurant, wants a certain payment, then we're going to take it in the same way on the customer side. But it's still so fragmented, so early, that we're going to keep our options open.
Bastian?
Yeah. So I think we're in a great situation at Postmates because our product is something entirely new, and whenever you do something new, you have the freedom to design certain parts of the experience. And at Postmates, we want to own the entire experience on the platform. So if we take a step back, what does it actually mean? It means that a merchant in San Francisco can use us to outsource all its deliveries, and it means that all of you could use our product to purchase any product that you like from a local merchant in San Francisco and have it delivered. And because we own that experience, we can work on the payment infrastructure a lot ourselves. So what we're doing is we're pushing payments to merchants, we're taking payment from the consumers, and we're pushing a delivery fee to the couriers who are doing the job. And we're doing most of that in real time, with very little delays wherever we have to wait for payouts. So we're using, for a big portion of that, Stripe, company also out of Silicon Valley for that. But more and more parts of that experience are designed and developed by us in-house. And again, the reason we can do that is because we control the entire element, from the delivery process to the purchase. So we're extremely excited about that.
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit to that, actually. We use a company called Balanced, and Balanced was a Y Combinator company from a couple of years ago. And they were basically built to facilitate payments for exactly the kind of marketplace we are. Part of that is because we were one of their first customers, and so we really got to help them develop their product. But they were built to do peer-to-peer transfers where a credit card goes in one side and ACH transfer goes out the other side, and we can hold money in escrow and make sure that transactions happen the way they should. I think we're going to see, we'll see dozens, if not hundreds, of more companies that are just doing better and better things in the payment space, and all of us will get to sit on top of them and kind of take the best of what works and use it. So I think it would have taken us a lot longer to build the company that we've built so far if that innovation wasn't going on at the payments level.
Okay. I'm going to ask maybe a specific question to each of you. Maybe start with Jonathan this time. So, we heard, search plays a huge role in location, in discovery, in finding, restaurants, in making orders and finding things around me. We heard obviously a big announcement this morning from Facebook getting into the search business. How do you think, that will, play into what you're doing in your platform? Do you see, integration around that? Do you see it as competitive to what you're doing in some respects, and in restaurants, listing on there and being found from that perspective?
Yeah, so to say that the term big data has been overplayed over the course of the past year would be an overstatement. But truly, the best data is going to win, and that may be a mashup of different sources of that. For Seamless, we have a very compelling data set. We have a very differentiated data set that's not easily replicated because we're down all the way at the SKU level. We understand, individuals' price elasticity. We understand elasticity at the item level. things like that. So Facebook is complementary in that regard.
Right.
Yelp may be complementary in that regard, whether it's understanding social networks and interactions between people, or ratings and reviews and things like that. Part of our vision again is to help not just facilitate the transaction, but actually elevate ourselves, get much earlier into that thought process, and be the preeminent local discovery engine. In order to do that, the pairing of this objective data set, actually understanding where people go, how much they pay, who they're eating with, times of day, for us, that's our unique asset that we bring to the table. And so, look, it's not surprising that Facebook is getting into it, but that's the nature of it. I do think a lot of these pieces are complementary, and who leads the way and who actually does the mashing up, I think, is really part of what's going to happen over the next couple of years. But not surprising, and it'll be an interesting year or two ahead as we decide who to partner with, who to compete against, and really at the end of the day trying to deliver great value for our customers to make a great decision about where to eat and what to eat.
Okay. Bo, you and I had a great chat last week, about storefronts in particular, and some of your work that you're doing around that. When you think about peer-to-peer marketplaces, and you think about creating jobs and activities for people to complete, and you think about people have something to sell or rent and all that kind of environment in a peer-to-peer model, how do you see that sort of evolution of kind of pop-up store, pop-up storefront? Obviously you're trying to facilitate that in one respect, but is that a big growth area? And I guess the second part B to that question is do you see sort of branded environments playing a role in that? Retailers, physical bricks and mortar, acting as a location for a peer-to-peer transaction to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of this gets to the caveat of we'll see, but all three of us anyway live in the online to offline world. 99% of our transactions happen in person. Sometimes at people's offices, sometimes at their house, sometimes at a Starbucks somewhere. I got pitched a partnership last week or the week before, maybe, from somebody who's actually launching a company called Storefront. And they're in the business of doing what Airbnb did for residential real estate space for pop-up stores, so that you can open a shop for 3 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever. And the pitch was, hey, you have all these people starting businesses. What if they want to try out the bricks and mortar thing? And I think it's really interesting to see kind of what's going to happen there. I mean, you guys serve bricks and mortar restaurants, but the people who are buying aren't necessarily going into them. You guys kind of make that happen. And the same thing with you guys, Bastian, right? You can get, we use Postmates at Zaarly all the time, right? And people have literally had golf clubs delivered to our office from the local sporting goods store. And so I think figuring out who's going to capture the value in that offline to online transaction or vice versa is going to be really interesting. I think for us, it's going to be a long time. I mean, certainly years, not months. Before we really figure out what it means to serve. So our storefront owners are virtual storefront owners. They own storefronts online. And how much is there really a demand for physical storefronts for those guys? I don't know. We're just kind of holding on tight to this thing right now and seeing where it takes us. But there's no doubt that neither of these things are going away. And so I think the really interesting thing is who's going to capture the lion's share of the value as both of these markets grow. I don't know. I don't know the answer yet. Hopefully us.
Okay. Bastian, let's talk about the delivery business, and obviously in the last few weeks in particular, we've heard lots of announcements from big players, eBay, Amazon, even big retailers like Target saying, from an online perspective, they're going into same-day delivery business. How does that impact your business? First of all, I mean, I would think in some respects it's not a competitive thing. You're serving a different market, but how do you see this sort of everybody moving to same-day delivery from a retail point of view?
Yeah. So I'd like to tag on
Sure.
To what Bo and Jonathan just said, because it's probably the smartest thing that I can say, and I don't have many smart things to say. But at Postmates, we believe that for local commerce to thrive, we believe that an understanding of local inventory is extremely important. And Jonathan and Bo just discussed storefronts and the understanding of a place. And I think at Postmates, we're fundamentally going a level deeper. We try to understand, as part of our vision, the inventory in a city the same way Amazon understands the inventory of one of their warehouses. And as a layer on top of that, what we want to do at Postmates is we want to redistribute that inventory. Because we believe in a world where you don't have to go to Amazon.com and find that computer that ships to you in 24 hours or 2 days if that same computer is available in your city. And we believe that in the same vein that what Bo and what Jonathan mentioned, that will fundamentally help local retail stores compete with big players. In our case, it's Amazon. In your cases, it's big restaurant chains or big box retailers. And so knowing that, what I just said, you can get an idea that we're not that fussed about, an announcement by Amazon that local delivery may or may not work. I totally believe that they have a problem offering same-day delivery on a larger scale simply because they have huge warehouses and you just can't replicate a city in a warehouse and have it all available at all times to ship throughout the same day. Whereby what we're concentrating on, we're not trying to get new products in the city, we just want to build an infrastructure that exists in a city that can be used by merchants, by consumers alike. Like a zip card that is on every corner, we want to have a Postmate at all times available for you to transport whatever you need. And I think we're extremely excited about the trend that, a lot of main players not only picked up our idea, but also a similar name. I think it will ultimately push consumer awareness. And if there's one last thing to add, I think from our side, it's that, if Google taught us one thing, then it's that faster is better. And obviously we hope that that works for the delivery space as well.
Very good. Is there any questions out here in the audience? I mean, these are three brilliant, smart people up here. Any questions out there? Because I can keep going, but no? You guys just want to start drinking, is that it?
Drinks?
Bo, you might remember this, but once we did, there was a panel that we did using your platform, and we actually created a task using your platform for somebody to deliver beer to the panelists. So if anybody's out there and they're on Zaarly right now, and you want to create a task, I'm sure there's somebody around here that can fulfill that. Anyhow, so let's talk about the role that trust plays in all of your environments. If you think about seamless context, there's you have to prove that you can drive volume, you can drive traffic to get these. I would think to get these folks on board. There's a trust relationship that has to be built. In the case of Zaarly and Postmates, maybe in a different context, there's kind of a rating that you could equate in a sense of trust in terms of how often does this person do transactions on the system? Are they credible? Can I trust them in that context? You're the folks who are delivering for you, your Postmates, have a score probably, right? In some respects, in terms of how good they are. So how does trust play a role in what you're doing?
You want me to?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think so. Trust at Postmates equals transparency, and I think that's the biggest weapon that we have. We are ruthless about how transparent we are with who the people are that deliver the products, if they do a good or a bad job, and we surface positive or negative feedback to our customers, and we talk about it publicly. Success or failures, good or bad couriers or delivery people. So fundamentally, I think transparency is, and again, transparency throughout the entire delivery process, from the ability to follow your Postmate the moment he accepts your job until he delivers your item on a map with a picture. I think that's our biggest asset when it comes to security.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say, I would reiterate that in the same way. It really transparency comes in a couple of different ways for us, and we build trust, first and foremost through our business model. It's really important, and we call our restaurants partners for a reason. We don't make money unless they do, and that's sort of step one of the bottom of the foundation, that we form. The second is we're pretty honest. In the beginning, as online ordering, at least, we're years in, we're a little further along, but we're still very early days. So in part, we're driving this channel shift. And so necessarily the question comes, well, are you going to be a creative for my restaurant, or are you just going to take demand that I otherwise had and get paid for it? So part of what we're doing is not just saying we're building demand, we're actually driving down your cost to serve. We're allowing you to focus your resources, again, on things that you do really well, which is produce food, fulfill deliveries in certain cases. But in other ways, helping people avoid answer the phone, that drives down the cost. They can focus those people on other things, fewer mistakes. And so being also very transparent about what it is, the type of value we're doing, and then also the data that we're providing for them. In some cases, we represent a very high level of their overall sales, and they're able to look within our data and say, okay, they can compare what we did without you and pre and post, they can do that. In other cases, they take our data and compare it to data that they might have in different places and say, this has been accretive. I'm able to run my business more effectively. So I would say transparency for us is exactly, I think, Bastian hit it, square on the head, and it's in part business model, in part data that we share, and in part, just being very honest with them about what our objective is, which is to try to get everyone ordering through our platform. At that point, not being a toll collector, like a credit card company, but actually driving costs down for them, which ultimately we'd like to share back with them.
So I'll maybe talk about this a little differently because it's actually what drives pretty much everything on our marketplace, and we screwed it up real bad the first time around. And so when we originally, the very first version of Zaarly we ever built was actually one that was kind of fueled on a hypothesis that in a local peer-to-peer marketplace like this, anonymity could actually be like a really powerful tool. And that was just wrong. It didn't solve anything, and all it did was basically resulted in if this is possibly imaginable, like a shittier Craigslist. And so our first cut at that was to basically just start to surface pictures of our users. And what we found is, so we had this really interesting problem in the beginning where there's a massive amount of demand and then a huge drop off between there and actually closed transactions, right? So somebody said, I wanted something. Somebody said, yeah, I can do that. 2, 3, 4, 5 people might say it. And then what would happen is not one of them would get chosen, none of them would get chosen. The deal just would not happen. So we started surfacing pictures at first, and we found that we did a bunch of A/B testing, and we found that if you had only a picture, so nothing other than no name, no nothing, no credentials, no reviews, because it was just the easiest thing to start with, you had a 70% higher likelihood of being chosen. So we were pushed on that a little further, and we actually did an internal project last spring, which resulted almost exclusively in the product that we have today, which, just for context, we're growing about 100 to 150% a month right now, which is really crazy growth, and it's quite fun, which started when we launched this new product. But our internal project was, I asked a couple people in-house, one who just happens to be a talented photographer, that was not his day job, and then somebody else who was doing community management stuff for us, to create an internal project. We called it the Seller Project. And they basically went and met a bunch of the people who are now storefront owners. At the time, we called them sellers, and did a photo shoot and basically interviewed them and wrote their story. And so this project was literally just for us internally, so that I could kind of show this to the team and say hey guys, this is who we're working for. And my request was to do 30 of these interviews. And by the time we got 12 of them done and put them up, everybody kept asking us why this wasn't our product. You go and you read this and you look at these people in their kitchen or in someone's backyard building something for them, and it was just such compelling material. And the whole reason was because it actually took the issue of trust off the table, and it made people want to engage with other people in a way that we just never seen before. So we started designing our product that is out there today. If you check it out, you'll see it is very human-centered. We send professional photographers to everybody who has a storefront. If you look at the stuff they sell and then look below that, it is their story that we help them write in a way that really lowers the barrier for engagement. And so I think in our marketplace, it is the engine that drives it. Kind of money is secondary to that. And then the last thing that I would maybe say on it is, and this totally surprised me, I thought we pretty much had this thing nailed on trust when I started to see, which has been really, really consistent actually since we launched storefronts, that are the biggest first purchase on Zaarly by volume, order volume, and money volume actually, is food that is cooked in someone else's house and delivered to you. And so it seemed freaky to me in the beginning, that's the thing that is going to really drive first purchase in this marketplace, but it absolutely is. And so when we got that nailed, it's about 45% of our first purchases are a homemade food in someone else's kitchen. I think that says that we pretty much nailed that trust thing, but it took us about a year to get there.
You just need food safety ratings now to go.
Well, there's a whole other whatever. They just passed some new laws in California about what's legal and what's not there. But whatever. If we have a problem with legality there, that's a great problem to have. So.
All right. There was a question down here in the audience.
My name is Ulrike Langer. I'm a German correspondent. I have one question for Bastian. I'm not sure I really got what makes you different from traditional courier services or just a bike messenger. since it's all within the same city? And then a second question for all of you, really. Representing the media, I always ask myself here, does media have any role in this, or are there hyperlocal parallel universes developing where the local incumbents, the media companies, are completely out of them?
Yeah. Should I just...
Yeah, go for it.
A great question, and you know, probably the panel time doesn't allow for like in detail overviews, but think about the differences a lot like sending a letter or calling someone between us and traditional courier companies. There's over 10,000 of them in the United States. It's a very fragmented space. You have 500,000 people employed. But what doesn't exist, there is no FedEx or UPS-like infrastructure on a local level. You basically find yourself going to places like Yelp and sifting through 200 courier companies in San Francisco trying to figure out the one that may or may not accommodate your needs. So I guess that is like a big differentiator for us. It is, it's fundamentally different.
Okay. And comments on the the media industry in relation to that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to comment other than you got your paid media, which we're using again to drive awareness around our category and things like that. But as it relates to consumer engagement, we don't really see the media as a place that we're playing. I mean, it's a hand-to-hand combat that's going on right now, and customers, if we can get them to love our service, to love the value that we're doing, by far and away, that's what we're going to get, to raise awareness and get people to use that product. So I don't know if it's so much hyperlocal or not. It may just be, the stage and where we are in the year 2013, and how great products, take off, and the ease by which communication, makes that viral marketing. So.
Yeah, I'd say maybe one thing on the media question. Something that we learned in the process of getting to where we are today is that big media, whatever, tech media, USA Today, Wall Street Journal, TechCrunch, whatever, those are really nice for competitive reasons, for fundraising reasons, but they're pretty useless for actually like engaging with your users, bringing new users, stuff like that. We've actually had a huge amount of success at the almost like hilariously hyper-local level. Like one of the most successful media pieces that has been written about Zaarly was written on a site in Prairie Village, Kansas called the PV Post, which is basically a guy who writes a newsletter for 2 high schools and their moms, like the moms of the kids who go there. And he wrote a little thing that featured a few people who were in his area that had storefronts on Zaarly, and it drove more engagement than almost anything else we've done. I think those kind of media outlets, which are very, I mean, they are authentically local at their core, end up being more important for us actually than big fancy headlines and stuff if we're really trying to drive users and engagement. But it's just because they've got a different relationship with their readers and users, and so there's more trust in that ecosystem. And for a service like ours, that really matters, because it can be weird at first when it's like, wait, you mean I'm going to buy this thing from this person who lives a few blocks from me? And when the more local the media, the more credence it gets, I guess, just as a model.
Other questions from the audience? No? Okay. Love to get your thoughts on, especially in the case of Zaarly and Postmates, but I think Seamless can probably weigh in on this too. But what are your strategies for kind of growing your operations into different regions, into different territories? I mean, obviously, it's a physical service that you're providing at Postmates in terms of people in a locale. How do you take that in New York and replicate it in Chicago and bring it to Boston and bring it to how do you approach that? And the same goes also from a Zaarly point of view. I'm just waiting for it to come to Toronto. So Jonathan too, if you can weigh in on kind of your growth strategy around kind of moving into other markets.
So I think Bo just mentioned an interesting thing. 1 or 2 questions before this one, and I actually wanted to tag onto that. He mentioned you had a huge spike in traffic suddenly, and I think that is a fundamental problem. If you look at the 3 companies, we're all somewhat operating under the rules of marketplaces, right? Mm-hmm. You have, for us, it's you have a fleet of couriers available downtime where there's people that order and restaurants, Seamless. You have restaurants that are willing to use your platform but need orders in order for them to be the preferred choice, and you need people to order food. And for the storefronts, you need these people that create these beautiful local products and people that want to buy them. And I think for all of us at the beginning, that like balancing supply and demand was like, at least for us, a huge challenge in like every market, because neither side is unlimited. So for a long time, we either had too many couriers or we didn't have enough, and neither is good really. So I think an understanding of that is very important, and striving for liquidity in a marketplace, and that counts for a specific city, by the way. I mean, our marketplaces are operating even more under those rules because we're operating from city to city. Fundamentally, in theory, you could use them everywhere, but really you focus efforts on a few cities. So I think for us, it was really important. We're about to launch in 2 more cities, and it's a premiere for us. But we believe that we believe in tracking numbers and understanding what we did in San Francisco and creating a blueprint from that. And the way we launch in other cities is a lot like political campaigns work. We have a launch team, and that launch team basically takes the DNA of Postmates for a specific time into another market, hires a general manager, prepares the ground, and then moves on. So that's how we plan to do it.
Just a quick comment on that before we move on. Do you kind of sort of interact with other companies that have similar strategies? Like would you, for example, sit down and talk to an Uber and figure out how they've kind of gone into different markets and kind of share best practices in that context? Or?
I mean, one of the huge benefits to have your company in San Francisco and the Valley is that happens automatically, either through friends or the founders from other companies. So the ultimate advantage is that there is this huge knowledge pool that you can tap in.
Okay. Bo?
Yeah, I don't know yet. We've launched in 5 cities. We know for sure that having people obsessed with local cities that they are accountable and responsible for makes a humongous difference. Whether or not they have to be there or not, I don't know yet. We've learned a lot from Uber specifically, just watching how those guys have grown and kind of what's worked there. It is impossible to do local well without real local knowledge and representation, and so like we know that for sure. It's just I don't know how big. I would love if we could open cities with 2 or 3 or 4 people and have them like live and breathe that and make it work. I just don't know yet. We're not we haven't nailed it yet. I'll let you know when we do.
All right, Jonathan.
Yeah, for us, most of the friction in our marketplace is coming from the supply side as we look to build our marketplace. So we actually right now have a very easy time signing up restaurants in big cities and in high density places that are high population density. But as we look to build our business, there's two main levers we think about from a supply side. One is how to help restaurants service a wider radius effectively and not draw perfect circles, but draw it in different ways so they can expose different parts of the demand curve essentially that are untapped. And in order to do that, we need to give them tools to adjust their hours of operation for certain parts of certain delivery zones that are further away, charge more money, have different minimums, and creating more flexibility for them to set different rules in a much more dynamic fashion based on the demand they're seeing is going to be a really important area of focus for us to unlock that supply, which unlocks demand, and vice versa. The other thing is for a product that is as perishable as food, managing the production of that food all the way through to delivery and getting it through that kitchen to the end user in as fast a fashion as possible is another key area of focus for us. And so thinking about ourselves as managing supply chain in the world of food, and we don't typically describe it that way, but it is an easy way to think about that. We need to give these small restaurants great tools to set expectations and to do a better job getting their food out faster to the people and get it in their hands so that people are incentivized so that they can have a great experience and want to come back.
And the idea that you guys actually make money, that's becoming cool again, right? Like, so,
Awesome.
One last quick comment on that, and then we're almost at the end of our time. But can you guys provide any thoughts? And I understand if you can't, but in terms of sharing, the volume of transactions going through your systems, in terms of how much commerce is being created.
Quiet here now.
You should go first because all our numbers are small compared to your delivery.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
So we haven't quoted a number for 2012, but then, remember we have public in 2000, which is now a year old. We did over $400 million of gross sales through our system last year. Our growth in 2012 was strong, and what we're seeing is accelerating growth, is what you'd imagine, right? We have a very firm belief, and if you would have asked 5 years ago, is this crazy? They probably would have said yes. 3 years ago, a little crazy. 10 years time, people are not calling restaurants anymore because it's just a more effective way to place your order. So these kids coming out of high school and college, that the first order they're ever going to place is via their mobile device, and they're never going back. And even lots of parents and grandparents are starting to do it too. So we're preparing for a world where we need to scale our business even further. That's what we'll say. So we haven't quoted a number for this year, but really strong growth. We'll come out with it pretty soon.
I just, like I said, like to be where they are in like 2 years. Then I'm cool.
Okay. How many packages have you delivered? Can you?
Oh, I just had it all prepared. I wanted to take on Jonathan's. They had $400 million in the 7 months that we were operating in 2012. We had one, but in 2 months we have two. So that gives you an idea of where we grow.
Yeah. All right. So it is possible, folks, and these guys are proving it. Any last comments before we wrap up that you'd like to share with the audience here?
This is hard. I think marketplaces are hard. Local is hard. Peer-to-peer is hard. We do all those things. Sometimes I wonder if we're crazy, but I think these are all. I think it's why Seamless gets talked about so much. Like they built like a real deal company and kicked ass in a space that was just damn hard. So much respect to you guys.
Appreciate you saying that. The respect is mutual, but it is hard. It's even hard at our scale. One of the things that we find interesting is you get this big Facebook announcement. It comes in TechCrunch, and the first feeling is the sky's falling. The truth is it's not. The big guys, while they have resources, and to us we might be bigger. To them, to us Facebook is really big and Google's really big. But local does not present nearly the same scale advantage to the big guys, and it goes to what you're talking about. These guys can give the Amazons of the world a different fight than they've been fighting. So the rules of the game are changing, and so I would say, for us, it keeps us going. We're helping small business compete more effectively. It keeps us coming to work every day, and I think that momentum is just accelerating right now.
Bastian?
We have over 100 Postmates in San Francisco, 50 members of our team, and if you ask any of them, they will tell you they have the time of their life. So if that counts for anything, then
Absolutely.
that should be said.
Excellent. So if you would, just put your hands together and help me thank this wonderful panel. Thank you.